All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to podcast 15 of Two Old Pirates. I think you see the other guy, Gabriel.
What's up?
We've had problems with communication due to the fact that he still works an essential job every single day. I'm still teaching at home. It's been a long time. It's been a good 2 or 3 weeks since me and him, well, maybe longer, been able to sit down and do something like this. But with the advent of technology, we're going to go ahead and do the best that we can to go ahead and put out this podcast for you guys to enjoy, and just so that you can see both of our beautiful faces again. I know you guys have been missing the two old pirates. You got anything to say to the?
Well, I'm glad to be back. It's kind of new to me. I mean, I've actually done this a few times, work related, but I think if this works out and we can continue to do this, this will work out until we get through this stay at home stuff that they've got going on. I don't know when they're going to lift it here in Texas, but if this works out good, we can talk every day if we want.
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, we had talked when this first started about, doing one every day, one every two days if it was dealing with sports or, whatever's going on and stuff. And we thought maybe that'd be too much of an overload for our listeners and stuff. But everybody that's listening, I want to tell you that I was ill for about 6 days. I was laid out. You might have seen it on Facebook and stuff. I'm better. I feel 100%. But the thing is, during that 6 days, when I was feeling a little bit better here and there, I put out as many ways to go ahead and get subscribers and to get views. I want to happily say that we're at, I believe the last time I checked, 189 or 190 subscribers. And remember, whoever's that number 200, they're going to get a special gift from us, and also they're going to get a special shout out. Every single time that we hit a milestone like that is magical to me and Gabriel, due to the fact that when we started this November of 2019, it was just two old friends wanted to have some fun, and we felt blessed every single time somebody subscribed. And now, if we can get to 200 after just, 5-6 months, something like that, that's big to us. We're just two regular guys and stuff, and we now have followers. And I'm not bullshitting you. Excuse my language. I'm not bullshitting you. We have followers not only in England, Italy, France, parts of Africa, Nigeria, Morocco, Egypt. Then you go to Asia. We have the Philippines. We have followers from Japan, South Korea, Australia, Papua New Guinea, where my dad fought in World War II. I never would have thought somebody would be following us from where my dad fought in World War II. In the United States, many different states. Subscribers, here's the deal. The one thing that I told Gabriel that I saw during that time that I was laid up in bed, 70% of you that are viewing these are not subscribing, which means that you're actually logging on, going in, watching the video forever, how long, but you're not hitting subscribe. And if you have a Google account, if you're logged into Google or anything like that, all you have to do is go up to that red button and hit subscribe.
Of course, subscribers. You just explained that we'd like to have more subscribers. It's not going to harm you in any way, right? But also, comment and debate it. And whether you agree with us or disagree, let's talk about these topics because it's good. I think other people will then kind of see comments and then they can throw their opinion in.
So although that we don't really want to have to spend a lot of time talking about it, we do have to cover a couple things on the coronavirus. As a teacher here in Texas, our governor, Greg Abbott, came out yesterday saying that he's canceling schools for the rest of the school year. But dealing with coronavirus, I found out a statistic yesterday that kind of really upset me, was that out of the 50 states, Texas is 49th in testing. Now, everybody always talks about California, New York, Texas, Florida as some of the larger states as in population, and we're second dead to last in having the amount of people tested. So here in Nueces County, where I live in Corpus Christi, we only have 79 people that have tested positive. And in Aransas County, where I grew up with Gabriel and Rockport, there's 2, I think. The problem is nobody's being tested. The other scary thing about coronavirus is, as of right now, I'm looking at the updates. We have done 3.7 million total tests. And President Trump usually talks about how we've given more tests and things like that. That's 3.7 million tests, but we have 740,000 positives, which means that it's around 20% that have tested positive that have been tested. So that's not a 2 or 3 or 5 or 8%. That's 20%. And that's a huge number. So out of the number that we've tested in the United States, about 20% of them have tested positive. That's 1 out of every 5 Americans that have been tested is testing positive. Um, of course, the death rate is closing in on 40,000. We had another 1,900 as of Saturday.
We got to keep the kids safe. As sad as it is for them, we couldn't let them go back to school and take the chance that they could pass this virus back and forth. So, I mean, we have to do what we have to do, right? We have to protect our kids. Opening up these, as we start to open up the economy a little bit, I'm still scared because, thinking, and researching like I have, the only thing that's really going to keep us safe, I mean, this social distancing and all of this stuff that we're doing is really helping out, right? But we still don't know. This is still a very deadly virus, killing a lot of people. And sometimes, Eric, when I hear, well, we could have lost this people, we've already lost a lot of people in my mind. And
That's it. We're going to cut it on coronavirus. And I thought we'd go and throw something. This has been on the back of my mind. And literally, we're not going to go into details, but for about 2 or 3 days, me and Gabriel have been trying to get this to work to where we can actually do what we're doing right now, which you're viewing, which is amazing that we finally got it to work because I thought he was going to break stuff last night. He was so pissed off in Rockport because we could not get anything to work. We tried to do Zoom. We tried to do Google Hangouts. He actually had to go get a different computer today. His iPad had to be updated, so it couldn't do anything. Last night was kind of, as we look back on it, pretty funny. Some of the stuff we had to go through due to the fact that we wanted to do this. We want to have something for you guys to watch, the Tool Pirates fans. Okay, we're going to talk about bands that you either noticed or you did not notice changed lead singers during their history. Okay, I'll just go down the list. I'll ask you the band, and you'll tell me what you know about the band and about their lead singers. Not guitarists, not drummers, not hits, just their lead singers. All right?
probably not going to do a good job on this one because I don't know.
Dude, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. All right, AC/DC, one of the biggest selling rock bands in the history of rock and roll. Do you know anything about their lead singers?
No, I just know that they switched. I just like their music. I really didn't see a lot of their videos growing up. I just, we listened to their music when I was hanging out with some friends. But I do know that I think they had a change, but I don't know who it was or anything like that.
All right.
But well, correct? They did change.
They had a lead singer named Bon Scott, and he was on. He sang the leads to like TNT, Dirty Deeds, Problem Child, Whole Lot of Rosie, Big Balls, Highway to Hell. And they were like, every single album, they started getting bigger and bigger and bigger outside of Australia where they're from. And then he had an alcohol problem, and he drank so much that he asphyxiated on it, which means he choked on his own vomit when he threw up. He was so drunk, he didn't know. Same way Jimi Hendrix passed away. So he was in the band. He was the lead singer. He was like everything. For 5 years, and he did 5 albums. Then when he died, they thought, do we just shut up and just leave and just shut down AC/DC? They asked a new guy named Brian Johnson. And in 1980, Brian Johnson joined, and he's known for Hell's Bells, Shoot to Thrill, Back in Black, You Shook Me All Night Long, For Those About to Rock, Thunderstruck, Money Talks, Big Gun, Who Made Who, all these other hits. So they actually went from a band that was like gaining fame to where they could have slipped off that cliff to where they went even bigger. Back in Black has sold, I think, 25 million albums by itself. And that was the album that came right after Bon Scott died. So people that kind of wrote them off said, it's over, man. Bon Scott's dead. He was your front man. And then they got a guy, and they made it even bigger. All right, now this one you will know. Van Halen.
Oh, yeah. I grew up listening to Van Halen, probably top 3 bands growing up from junior high to high school that I enjoyed. But they started out with David Lee Roth, I know, and I liked a lot of their Running with the Devil. I used to hear a lot of that stuff when I was with my older cousins and stuff. But then I know that when he left and he went to Sammy Hagar, and actually, I think I told you the story when I went down to California. I'd never really seen Van Halen, but I went down, and probably like the late 80s, 88, 89, somewhere around there. I was in California visiting some family. I was up there with an uncle, and I was there like maybe a week, and my cousin told me that we're going to have this concert. It's like the Monsters of Rock concert, I believe it was. And said, yeah, who's going to play? I think I'm like maybe 15 years of age, I think, and 16, somewhere around there. And he says, it's going to be like Kingdom Come, Metallica. And Metallica was coming up at that time. So it was Kingdom Come, Metallica, Doc and Scorpions, and the headliner was going to be Van Halen. I was, oh man, I've never seen Van Halen. And so we go down to downtown Los Angeles, and at the old Coliseum where the Raiders played. And I'm sitting there, and of course I got my ticket late, so I had to go and sit away from the family. But I enjoyed the concert. Watching Van Halen was awesome, and I think I think they had Sammy Hagar. So I know that it was David Lee and Sammy, but I think you told me that there was in between they had another singer. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, David Lee Roth, not known as Diamond Dave, and he had been with them from the beginning. They released album. He was with them from '74 to 1985. And in 1985, when they released Panama and Jump and all that stuff, I think he got a little bit too big headed, and he decided he was going to go solo. So he basically just shipped off and did his own stuff. Well, they were caught, for everything Eddie Van Halen was known for, his guitar work and stuff, you still need that front man. So they tried out 5 or 6 different guys, and Sammy Hagar, who had only been known for like I Can't Drive 55 and stuff like that, he'd had his own like little bitty bit in the rock world, but he wasn't about to become what he was. So he joined Van Halen. He was hired, and he was with them from '86 to '96. So he was there for about the same time that David Lee Roth was. David Lee Roth was on 6 albums total, and Sammy Hagar was on 4 albums. And they sold in the millions with Hagar also. And then in 1996, something happened, and they fired Hagar. They actually, I think they had a manager call him or something. He didn't even know he was down in Mexico at his resort, and oh yeah, you're not part of the band anymore. And that's the bad thing about Eddie Van Halen, is that's kind of the guy he is. He's very fiery, and he'll tell you how it is. And so he just fired him. He did the same thing with the original bassist, Anthony, who had been with the band since the beginning. So they fired Hagar. They didn't bring back Roth. So they're like, we'll hire somebody else. And if you, a little bit of trivia, in the 90s, there was a band in the early 90s called Extreme. They had 2 big hits, More Than Words and Wholehearted. Both of them were top 10. One of them hit #1. And their lead singer was named Gary Cherone. So they said, hey, Gary, do you want to join? Well, that's a dream to him, because, I mean, Extreme was a small, low bitty time band. This is freaking Van Halen. And so in 1996, he joined, and they did release an album and hit #4. It went gold, but it did not sound like Roth or Hagar. So they didn't really sell out their stadiums like how they had been. And he was only in the band for 3 years, till 1999. They only did 1 album, but it did go gold just on the name of Van Halen. And then since then, they've gone back and forth. They released an album with David Lee Roth about 8 years ago of some older music that they had recorded years and years before, and maybe 1 or 2 new ones. It went maybe gold. I don't know if it went platinum, but they've never really had another lead singer, other than they've toured with Roth and Hagar off and on. And now evidently nothing's going on with them. So that's the Van Halen. All right, next one, Doobie Brothers.
I started liking, and I do like them today, but I started liking them because you listened to them. And once, of course, my favorite song is "What a Fool Believes," I believe is what it's called. But every time I hear that song, it reminds me of you. But I don't know much about the Doobies. As I would hang out with you, you'd play their music. Very talented band, Michael Mcdonald. I know you've seen him a couple of times, but I like them. I still like them today. I listen to them, and every time I listen to them or a song comes on, I definitely think of you. But I don't know much about them. I know you'd be able to talk more about them than I would.
Well, Doobie Brothers had Tommy Johnston as their lead singer, and Patrick Simmons is like this other lead singer. But Tommy Johnston was the main guy in like China Grove and Long Train Running, and he had all these different hits, and listen to music and stuff. And he was there from '71 to '76, and then he dropped out. He got sick of the travel, and he had a bleeding ulcer in his stomach. So they said, hey, can we pull anybody else in? And somebody else in the Doobie Brothers said, hey, there's this young guy. He played with Steely Dan. His name's Michael McDonald. He's a piano player, and he can do some harmony, and Patrick Simmons will just sing lead. Well, they found out that his voice was so good that they said, hey, do you have anything that you've been writing on? So he had some songs like Taking It to the Streets and stuff like that. So they invited him in, and the whole dynamic of the band changed. You'll find Doobie Brother fans, because I'm huge Doobie Brother fan. Um, you'll find pre Michael McDonald, and that's all they go by is that hard rock and China Grove rocking down the highway stuff. And then you have the Michael McDonald Doobie Brother fans where it was more jazz, blues, pop, and that's me. And so Michael McDonald was there from 76 to 82. And he only did 4 albums with them. Tommy Johnston then came back in 87. They've been touring as the original Doobie Brothers without Michael McDonald. They're all still friends. There's no animosity or anything. But yeah, when we were in high school and I first started listening to Michael McDonald music, I was just like, I was hooked. And I've probably seen him about 20, 25 times. All right. This one, I know you're going to sit there and say you don't know that much. We've all heard their music, but I did not even know until I did some of this research how many different freaking lead singers this band has had. Fleetwood Mac.
Before we get into Fleetwood Mac, like imagine being in high school. Imagine being like a freshman or sophomore. Everybody's listening to Metallica, rock, and you've got one guy out of the whole school that jams out to the Doobie Brothers. And everybody, I mean, we're 16, maybe 17, 15. One guy in the whole school, and everybody knew how much Eric liked the Doobie Brothers. Actually, people in school called him Doobie. He was Eric Doobie the Wolf. And that's how much he liked the Doobie Brothers.
Well,
just picture in your mind, everybody listening to Metallica. I was listening to Metallica, Van Halen, all this stuff. One guy sitting there just jamming out to the Doobie Brothers.
Yeah, crazy. But what's ironic about it? What is a doobie? It's a joint.
Well, yeah, that's not you.
And I've never smoked marijuana in my life, so I mean, I'm like jamming out to this band, and doobie is slang out of California. So growing up in a small Texas town, I never heard the name Doobie. I didn't know what it was. So people started calling me Doobster and Doobie and stuff, and I'm all like, yeah, dude, that's me, the Doobie Brothers. I had no freaking clue it was a drug. So the guy who's the most anti-drug person you'd ever meet was nicknamed after a marijuana joint that I had.
True. Fleetwood Mac, Stevie Nicks, I think is correct, right? I can tell you that about Fleetwood Mac is I loved the music then and I love it now. She very talented. There's quite a few songs that she came out with that I like, but
what I found out is Fleetwood Mac was started as like a jazz soul type band, so like rhythm and blues, and they started off with a singer named Peter Green. And he was their lead singer from 68 to 70. Then he took a really bad hit of acid over in Germany, and he basically went crazy. He lost his mind, so they had to fire him because he was like, he needed to go to a mental institution. That's how bad the acid trip was. They got a guy named Danny Kerwin, who was the singer also from 68 to 72, so they kind of overlapped. And then there was a guy named Bob Welch, who was the lead singer from 71 to 74. So all these things kind of overlapped to keep the band going. And then in 1975, Lindsey Buckingham, who was dating Stevie Nicks, were invited into the band. And with Christine McVie, they formed the vocals that we now know on all the great, Fleetwood Mac songs. They were together from 75 to 2018. Technically, you've had Peter Green, Danny Kerwin, Bob Welch, Lindsey Buckingham, Stevie Nicks, Christine McVie, and Neil Finn. But the band's also been around since 67. So, I mean, that's a long ass time to still be around, and they're going to tour again. Get on to a fun one. I used to listen to this music when I'd be playing tennis. So you weren't out there, but you might have heard them. I know that you like one of their lead singers, so I luckily got to go see play last year, Genesis.
Well, let me just tell you before we get into Genesis, if Fleetwood Mac does come close to the area, you and I should go. I like Fleetwood Mac. And Genesis, I know you're going to be up and going and seeing them. I wouldn't be able to go, but man, if they were around close to us, I sure like to go.
Peter Gabriel, like your first name Gabriel. His name was Peter Gabriel. Remember Sledgehammer? And
absolutely.
Okay, and then he had a song called In Your Eyes. That's me and my wife's song of the last 26 years. He was their original lead singer from 67 to 75. So they released 6 albums, and in total they sold about 1 million copies. They weren't very popular. They were getting more and more popular. Each album got a little bit more airplay in the United States, but they weren't that big. Then in 75, Peter Gabriel basically said, I'm out. I want to go solo. I want to spend more time with my family, so I quit. So Genesis was like, do we go on? And some people in the band said, maybe we'll just play instrumental stuff. No singing, because they didn't think anybody in the band could sing. Two main other guys, Tony Banks and Mike Rutherford of Genesis, they said, why don't you just be the singer? And he's all, no, I'm the drummer, I don't sing. And they're like, just try. We never would have all the Phil Collins hits that we had in the 80s and 90s and stuff if they would not have said, just do it. So he released an album with them as the drummer, and he'd still sit behind the drum. He didn't go out in front or anything, but the microphone. And together, that group released 8 albums and sold like 30 million records in the United States. And so they stayed together until 96. And finally he said, I've been with the band for since 1970, so 26 years. I'm going to go ahead and go solo now. So after almost 30 years of his life giving it to this band and being the lead singer for 20 of those years, he departed, and they were like, do we give up? And they said, no, let's hire another guy. So they hired a guy named Ray Wilson. Ray Wilson had been big over in the United Kingdom, but he wasn't very big over in the United States. And they released one album, and it did not even go gold, which means 500,000 sold. So they kind of folded up, and they've done a couple of reunion tours, and then that was it. They weren't going to do anymore. One thing that you had said is that you wish that you could possibly go see them. I think because of this, if it goes off well enough, that they might add an American tour. And hell, I'll buy you the ticket, my friend, to go ahead and go to that, because that'd be awesome.
It would be awesome. Genesis, we grew up around there, right? Going to school. I mean, people jam out to a lot of rock. Of course, when we went to school, it was all about rock, right? But I know during the sporting events when we played, man, I would hear a lot of those Genesis songs, and they were good. And then going up with you too, going up to the tournaments and stuff. We're at your house before a tournament, jamming out to some of his music. Man, it takes us back some really good memories back when we were young. It's great. I would say out of all those bands that we named, Van Halen would be number 1 for me. Genesis would be number 2, and Fleetwood Mac would be number 3. Those would be my top 3 bands.
If I did just the top 3 out of the 8 bands, I'd probably do Doobie Brothers number 1. You know that. Genesis number 2, and I'm thinking probably AC/DC. I'm thinking probably AC/DC. But the last thing I want to do tonight before we sign off is I call it the toughest guy I've ever met. And it's the story about out at the beach in Rockport when a certain guy named Larry was hit in the face with a 2x4. You know what?
Oh, yeah.
You want to tell the story?
No, you can tell it.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I like telling stories, as you can tell. All right. Gabriel told me a story about, were you at the beach that night, or did you hear about it?
No, I was actually close by, but I didn't actually see it. But I was told about it. When I was told that story, I believed it right away. Tough guy was then, and I believe he's still tough today. So you can go ahead and tell the story again. I didn't see it, but I was told about it. But I believe it.
The story that was told to Gabriel that he then told to me, which we both believe, but the beach in Rockport used to be open 24/7. There was no paying to get on. There was no like curfew at 11 and stuff. So guys would go hang out there and sit in the bed of their truck and drink a beer. And, if the cops came by, they would just hide the beer and just wave. And it was just small town Rockport. It wasn't like how it is now. And so one night, this guy named Larry is sitting out at the beach at night drinking with some of his friends, and these guys show up, and I don't know who the guys are to this day, but they had a beef with Larry. They all piled out of this car, and they were going to confront him. Now Larry, which we're not going to give away who it is or anything, and if you're watching this and you know who it is, don't give it away in the comments or anything. But to me, he's the when they talk about Mike Tyson being the baddest man on earth, Larry is in the same group with this. I'm going to say he was maybe 5'6"? What do you think? About 5'6", 5'7"?
Yeah, somewhere around there, I believe. Yeah.
Was he muscular? No.
No.
But he was a cowboy. He was a redneck kind of guy, and always nice. He had long. Remember, this is the '80s, so he kind of had the long flowing hair, went down to about his neck. Kind of like you'd see from an old '80s movie and stuff. And he was there at the beach, and these guys pile out, and he's just sitting there drinking his beer, and they start talking smack to him like, we're going to kick your ass, come on. And he's like, look, I don't want to fight you guys and stuff. So They basically keep pushing the envelope. So from what I heard, he takes another drink out of his beer, sets it down, gets off the end of the truck, off the bed of the truck, the tailgate, walks over, and there's like 4 or 5 guys, and he's all like, "So I'm going to fight all 5 of you." And he was going to go ahead and do it. I mean, he already had a little bit of alcohol in his system, and he, from what we found out, he's a pretty bad mofo. What he didn't see is that one of the guys, when they got out of the car, they took out a 2x4, and they held it to where the thin side, instead of the long side, the 2 inches would be swung like a bat and hit him. So it wouldn't be a flat 2x4, it'd be on the side. And he didn't see that guy carrying it behind him. So, he's looking at these 4 or 5 guys, not fully circling him, but they're definitely going around him. And it's like out of a movie, you're going to be jumped by 4 or 5 guys. I don't know what was in Larry's mind, because he basically felt, I can probably kick their ass. And then evidently one of the guys said, "Hey," and when he turned, he swung like a baseball bat, and with that 2-inch side, drove it straight into Larry's face. They figured, hey, we'll pounce on him. And after he got hit in the face, he took a couple steps back. Blood's trickling out of his mouth, of course. It's, anybody who gets hit in the face is going to react in a certain way, but to get hit by a solid 2x4 in the mouth, that's going to knock most people out of commission. From what I heard is that he then looked up, and he basically, with his jacked up frontal teeth, said, "Boy, you guys really messed up." And he started picking the chunks of teeth that had been broken off in his mouth out and dropping them onto the road, out of his mouth. So jagged little, what was left of from being knocked out, he pulled those out and dropped them on the ground, wiped his face, and then proceeded to whip the other 5 guys' asses. Beat the shit out of them, excuse my language. And then went back over to his thing, took a swig out of his beer, swished it around and spit it out, and then drank the rest of the beer. Never left. They had to pick their asses up, get in their car, and drive off. I was a kid when I heard this. I was maybe 14, 15 when Gabriel told me that he had heard some of his friends had been out at the beach and saw the whole thing. And I was all like, I wonder how true this is. You'd have to fast forward, I'm going to say probably to, I don't know. I know I was in HEB. I remember where I was. And I'm pushing a cart, and I look up, and I see a guy with long flowing hair, and he's got a baby or a child in the cart. And as he opens up one of the things to get something out of the frozen section, I saw Larry, and he turns around. He's like, looking at me like, "Who are you guys all? My name's Eric," and stuff. I said, "You're older than me," and stuff. I said, "But I've grown up here in Rockport, and you went to high school," and stuff. He's all like, "How you doing, man?" Teeth still missing. The teeth are still missing. And I was all, "I got to ask you a question, man." He's all, "Yeah, what is it, man? What is it?" And he had a little bit of talk like that because he's still missing his teeth. Now, this is years later. I'm an adult. He's an adult. He's got kids. And said, "Larry, is it true that one night some fools went out to the beach and tried to jump you, and they hit you with a 2x4 in them?" And he smiled again like this, and you could see like 5 or 6 teeth gone. And he's all, "Yep, this is my trophy." And I was all, "What?" He's all, "This is what they did to me, but I'll whip their ass." And I was all like, "It is true." And he's all, "They tried to whip my ass, but they couldn't." And he just smiled, and that big old gaping thing was there. And I was all like, "It's freaking true. It's freaking true." The scariest thing to me is if I was one of those guys who's like, "Yeah, we're going to kick his ass. There's Larry." When he started picking out chunks of his teeth and dropping them and then spitting blood out, and you didn't knock him off his feet. And like I said, he was not a big guy. He's not like some 6'2", 200-pound guy and stuff. He was just a regular 5'6", 5'7" guy. And then he whipped all their asses. That's one of the most badass stories I've ever heard. And he's got to be in his mid-50s now. And I would still not mess with him.
But I know that he was hit from behind, if I remember correctly. And yeah, he didn't fall. I mean, it's the way I heard it was, I mean, you're talking about you got a free shot with a weapon. No, but like imagine this: you got a free shot at somebody that didn't even know it's coming. So if I'm standing there, you're standing there, somebody's gonna pop us. You don't even see it coming, and so you're hitting. I don't know how big the guy was that took that and hit him, but you got the whole full force to knock this guy out. And when you hit somebody like that from behind or from the side or however it was, and he doesn't fall, and he stands there and he's spitting, blood and teeth out, man, I like to party, but you just couldn't step over the line, and start stuff with him because he wouldn't back down. But everybody knew who he was. A lot of people liked him, and just a guy you didn't mess with. But he wouldn't go around thinking he was a guy that could drop anybody. But if you stood up to him, you were going to find out who he was. And you're right. He wasn't a 6'2", 260. If you look at him, you thought, man, I could probably take this guy. But he wasn't that easy. Looks can be deceiving. I did want to say that he's a great guy, though. He's not. You tell the story because I was told that I didn't see it. I'd love to have seen it. Well, I'm glad I didn't. But this guy not to fall, whoo, man, I think that story got around and people were kind of like, man, I ain't going to mess with this guy no more. But outside of all that and telling that story, really nice guy. He'd be a good guy. Outside of fight, he'd be a good guy to have on your side as a friend because not only we talk about the fighting right, but the guy would help you out.
And Larry was a really, really nice guy. But like how Gabriel said, if you came looking for trouble and you did something to his family or him, you're probably going to end up in the hospital or something. I'm not saying he was Bruce Lee or Jean-Claude Van Damme or, but on that night, from what we heard, the bits and pieces of information that we got, there was a 2x4 used. That's enough right there. He is missing all of his front teeth due to getting hit smack in the face with that. And the people that were there, where it was 3, whether it was 5, where it was 2, I don't know. He whipped all their asses.
But it is a true story.
All right. Well, I don't know how long we've been on, maybe an hour and a half. So this is a little bit longer, but it was good to be able to get this done with Gabriel. So we're going to go ahead and sign off. And now that we got this going, since he has tomorrow off, maybe I'll see if he can get on for a little bit and we'll do maybe a little bit of sports or we'll do stories of Rockport. But I'm happy to see you, Gabriel. I'm happy to see that you're doing well and that you're back and that we can do this again now that we've got all this technology figured out.
Sounds good. And I enjoyed it. And we should pop on back tomorrow for a short podcast. Maybe talk about stories or just, something. I would like to continue to update when we get on the podcast. We don't have to spend a lot of time on the coronavirus, right? But it is good to update continually when we get on these podcasts, just a quick few minutes just to let them know, where we're at and just an overall general overview of what's going on. At our park too, trying to tell stories about the Mexican park. It was a couple of years there that we did stuff that I think people would think, no way could they have done this. Things that we saw at that park, you and I have talked about that, things that we saw before when we played football, we played baseball, or some of the fun times that we had in basketball. And those are moments, that was a time that it will never happen again. I mean, we've talked about that. And so at some podcasts, I like to be able to kind of reminisce about the park because that was a time that park was big for you and me both. It's a part of who we are today. And it's good to share those stories with people because everything that we say, right, it's the truth. We ain't fibbing nothing. What we talk about here, the stories that we tell, because it's been a while. I don't know if it's to the T accurate, but it is. When we tell a story there, it really did happen. And so it's good to be able to talk about stories that that happened when we were in school, Rockport, and also the Mexican part.
Sounds good. All right, thanks for signing on, big guy.
All right.